Greetings, welcome back. We're doing chapter 16 today. We're right there in the home stretch, guys. Chapter 16, chapter 17, final exam, and we're out of here. All right, you guys have done great. I'm really excited for these last 2 weeks. They're shorter chapters, not that big, not a lot of information there. I didn't pull, and I'll even be honest, I didn't pull a lot of information here to hit you guys with the exams. There's stuff on here, of course, in the review questions. So you're still responsible for knowing this. But let's jump right in. Let's keep this short. Let's try to get you out of here as quickly as possible. Let's talk about identification procedures. The book is really, really on point with what it says on page 490 right there underneath definitions used for identification procedures. Just read this with me. Having an eyewitness identify the perpetrator in court has an enormous impact on the jury. Unfortunately, the witness may not be correct. That is the catch-22. It is so powerful to have a witness say in court, that person did it, or yes, that person did it. It's even more powerful to say I identified the person before trial, and 6 months later at trial, I can still identify as the same person. There's such a powerful component to that. For some reason, the jury is just heads over heels with it. It's just as good as having an expert come in there and say, conclusively A, B, and C. When in reality, the jury doesn't really understand the risks involved with all this. And let's talk about identification procedures and the situations that occur in lineups, show-ups, and photographic lineups. Number one, the general rule is that you don't have any constitutional rights at all in any one of these three. Your book sets it up a little bit different, but it's not all the time that you have. Let me backtrack. The book sets this up like as if the suspect has a constitutional right to have an attorney present during a lineup or sometimes a show up. And that's not really the situation, because oftentimes a person is not put into a lineup but after there's been an arraignment. See, the book relies on the Chapter 6 right to an attorney, not the Chapter 5 right to an attorney. You wonder, where is the Chapter 6 right to an attorney? And there is. There's a Chapter 6 right to attorney upon the initiation of formal criminal charges. So we talked about earlier in chapters 1, 2, and 3 about arraignments and the criminal procedure process itself in more of like a timeline format. And we talked about the arraignment. And this is the part where we find out whether or not there was probable cause to arrest or to keep the suspect overnight or for an extended period of time and then brought before the judge. This probable cause, that's called the initiation of formal criminal charges. And at that point in time, when that happens, you have the right to an attorney. Problem is that right usually is not violated until a criminal trial. It's not violated until your actual criminal sentence is given out. So if you were like given probation, well, your criminal sentence wasn't jail, so your right to an attorney wasn't violated. So it's not violated until after the fact. So there's that risk right there that, yeah, you have the right to an attorney, but if you were denied one, what's going to happen? Well, we're not going to know until you actually go to trial. What if you never go to trial, but you were still in a lineup or you were in a show up? Well, that doesn't matter. So you can kind of see where this is going. You could see that the police can actually build a case up while violating the defendant's constitutional right. Now, granted, does it really happen that often? Not really. I'm just going to be fair with you. It's not. But the risk of abuse is there, and that's the situation. So that's why I've told you, come back around. There's generally no right to have an attorney present in a lineup or show up. You just got to go to that lineup. And no matter how suggestive that lineup is, it doesn't matter. You may have a right, you may think you have a right, but the right hasn't been violated quite yet according to the law. So this is one of the situations where you hear a lot of people say the justice system is messed up. This would be one of those situations where you may hear someone say they put me in a lineup with 5 other people that don't look anything like me. The justice system is messed up. You're absolutely right. Justice system is messed up. So the general rule again, you don't have a right to an attorney during a lineup, show up, or even a photographic lineup. Let's talk about these 3 situations. A lineup is just, you've seen it on TV before. I'm sure you've seen it in all the criminal TV shows and in movies. You have the guy or girl stand up in front of, a double mirror, and there's maybe maybe 7 to 10 people there, and they're supposed to all generally look like you in height and hair color, maybe not distinct facial features, but height, weight, eye color, hair color, they're supposed to look somewhat alike. And on the other side of that double mirror is usually the ADA, maybe the ADA actually, maybe not, police officers and the victim, or an eyewitness, and their job is to point out who did it out of everybody who was there. That's more common in bigger cities where confusion for certain people and a lot of different people look alike in that situation, at least demographically and physically. A show up is a little bit different. This happens actually. The show up is usually going to happen when there's an ongoing emergency. For example, there's maybe an armed robbery, and they catch the suspect running away, and they catch him, and there's only one eyewitness, and they want to make sure that because there's an ongoing emergency, they want to settle the scene as quickly as possible, but they have this one guy, and they want to make sure that they're not wasting the resources on this one guy. They'll take this guy directly to the eyewitness and say, is this the guy? And it's only one guy, or it could be one girl, and that's all it is. It's a show up. It's right there and then. And the witness will generally say, because it's the heat of the moment, regardless if they're right or wrong, they'll always say, yeah, that's the person. Always. They always will, regardless if they're wrong. Now, I'm not saying they can't be right, but they're always going to say that that's the person. And a photographic lineup, this usually happens, you see this a lot in cold cases. A case has been reopened back up, and you can't find the original suspect, but you have a lot of pictures of the suspect, and you pull the suspect up and you throw the suspect's face in, with a bunch of other faces that are supposed to look like the suspect in a lot of different ways. You present them to a victim or an eyewitness that was familiar with the scene a while ago, and they're like, that kind of looks like him, and then, moves on from there. These are the three, situations, and we are trying to protect in these situations. We should be, but we don't really. And we talked about, again, I said you have a right to an attorney during the initiation of formal criminal process. At that point in time, if you are presented in a lineup after that, then you're supposed to have an attorney present with you. You're supposed to have an attorney protect that situation. And what would the attorney do? Well, in my situation, I have been in the situation before where I was at a lineup. And it was my job to say, hey, I want to eliminate certain people, and I want to put other people back in. And I was allowed to do that. I was allowed to say, I'm not letting that eyewitness in here until we eliminate the first person and the seventh person, because those people look nothing like my client. And on top of that, they're already going to be eliminated. So then now the chances of my client being picked are that much higher, not because of, he didn't actually do it, but just based on pure probable chance, on a percentage, on your stakes. You're playing blackjack at this point in time, and I don't really like it. You're playing blackjack with my client's life here. No, so get them out and put two people in there that look closer to everybody else or my client specifically. And that's what they did. But the problem is that doesn't always happen. That usually will happen before the formal criminal process. And after the eyewitnesses identified them, then they'll go to the arraignment before the magistrate and then tell the magistrate, well, the eyewitness identified this person. Boom, right there. Already, the case has already been stacked against the person and not even have a chance to defend themselves yet or have an attorney to defend for them. Show up works the same way, except usually, like I said, it happens in an ongoing emergency, so it's harder to get an attorney involved there. The photographic lineup, again, don't really have to have an attorney present for that. Now, the one last thing I want to touch on about this, we talked about the Sixth Amendment right. You have to have a formal criminal process. But what if you do have a lineup? The one protection that you have for a lineup or a show up, it's not going to be present in a photographic lineup, is you do still have the Fourth Amendment. You still have the Fourth Amendment because if you're in a lineup or if you're in a show up, that means you've been seized. That means the police officers have taken you and you're now under arrest. And in order to be under arrest, we know from earlier in Chapter 10 that there has to be probable cause. There has to be a warrant or there has to be probable cause. And if you're in that situation and they don't have the right to seize you, then anything after that seizure is fruit of the poisonous tree, because the fruit of poisonous tree does apply to the Fourth Amendment. So anything after that will be seized, which would include the identification. So that's all I really want you to understand about Chapter 16. I've touched on most of it already in giant general parts, and then now I would like to see you go in there and kind of develop it a little bit more, especially this due process part. Try to see if you can make that coexist with the Fourth, Fifth, and Sixth Amendments. If you have any questions, please email me, and I look forward to seeing you for Chapter 17.